Story 3. The Unbroken Session. Christopher Lewis. Story 3. The Unbroken Session. Temple Mount, age 16. The simulation chamber on Temple Mount was a vast, windowless sphere of matte black alloy and projected light. Its curved walls drank sound and color until the only illumination came from the holographic Senate session unfolding in the center. The air inside was cool and dry, carrying the faint ozone bite of active projectors and the sterile undertone of recycled station atmosphere. The floor felt slightly yielding underfoot, a subtle give designed to mimic real polished stone while absorbing the impact of sudden movements. Overhead, faint blue conduit lines pulsed like slow veins, casting shifting shadows across the holographic senators arguing over rim trade concessions. The temperature was kept deliberately low to sharpen focus, raising faint gooseflesh on bare arms and making every breath visible for the briefest instant before it vanished. Thexia Etherion stood in the center, wearing only the plain gray trainee tunic. At 16, she had grown into her height, tall, lean, composed, but her body still carried the last traces of adolescence, muscles honed by relentless drills, yet not fully matured. She had been running this same simulation for weeks. Instructor Kalis's orders were simple and merciless. Protect the voice of the Chancellor without silencing the room. No alarms, no disruption. The session must continue exactly as scheduled. She touched the inner pocket of her tunic. The moon rock was there, warm from her body heat, its silver veins catching the faint blue light from the conduits. She pressed it gently against her chest, letting the small weight steady her. The stone always brought her back to Lysara 4, the damp garden grass under bare feet, the sharp mineral scent of rain on stone, Alethea's laughter ringing like bells, her mother's voice saying, "One day it will not be just your sister." The memory grounded her. The moon rock reminded her why she stood here, to protect alignment, to keep the right voices speaking when the stars grew dark. Even in a simulation, the stakes felt real. Kalis's voice came from the observation deck above, calm and measured. "Begin." The holographic Senate session snapped into full motion. Senators from a dozen species argued in overlapping voices, trade lanes, resource quotas, the latest Jakari border incursions. The projected Grand Chancellor Tino stood at the central dais, speaking with quiet authority about balance and restraint. Thexia watched the room the way she had been trained, not for faces, but for fractures. She catalogued every shift in posture, every unnatural pause, every hand that moved too deliberately. Then the threat appeared. A projected Jakari operative disguised as a Kaldrim senator lunged from the second row. The attack was sudden and savage, shoulder driving forward, sleeve whipping back, the plasma needle flashing under the projected lights like a striking serpent. Shouts exploded across the chamber. Chairs scraped. Holographic bodies surged in panic. The operative's momentum was raw, brutal, a blur of violence aimed straight at the Chancellor's neck. Thexia's heart slammed against her ribs. Time slowed. She saw the needle glint, saw the operative's teeth bared in a snarl, saw Tino's expression shift from calm authority to the first flicker of surprise. A microsecond of doubt flashed through her. What if I'm too slow? What if my reach falls short? What if this time the room breaks because of me? Her muscles tensed, the familiar burn of adrenaline flooding her limbs. Her 16-year-old body protested the sudden demand. Her shoulder twinged from yesterday's drills. Her breath caught. But the moon rock was there. The promise held. She stepped between the attacker and Tino's projection in one fluid stride. Her hand shot out, fingers closing around the wrist mid-lunge with serene precision. The impact jarred up her arm, harder than expected, the holographic resistance calibrated to feel real. but her grip remained steady. She twisted, muscles straining yet controlled, forcing the needle offline. The operative's raw momentum carried both of them forward a half step. Her boots scraped the yielding floor. Sweat prickled along her spine. She drove her elbow into the precise nerve point at the base of the neck, putting every ounce of her training and every bit of fear-fueled strength behind the strike. The attacker dropped to his knees with a grunt that sounded too real for code. All while, she continued the exact sentence the Chancellor had been saying. The words left her mouth in perfect cadence, calm and clear, matching the projected tone without a single tremor. Inside her skull, the effort was brutal. One part of her mind locked on the fight. Burning shoulders, trembling legs, the raw power of the assassin's lunge still vibrating through her bones, while another part held the sentence steady, forcing her vocal cords to remain serene even as every muscle screamed for release. The friction was excruciating. Her throat felt tight, her breath shallow, yet the words flowed unbroken, as if the violence and the voice belonged to two entirely different people. She compartmentalized with ruthless discipline. The body fought, the voice protected. The contrast tore at her, but she held both halves together. The hollow froze. Silence filled the chamber. The only sound was Thexia's controlled breathing and the faint hum of the projectors powering down. Her arms trembled from the strain. Her shoulder throbbed. A thin line of sweat traced down her temple. Kalis descended from the observation deck and stood beside her, arms crossed. Clean execution. You held the room together when everything wanted to shatter. That is the difference between a guard and a protector. Thexia wiped sweat from her brow. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. Did the session continue? It did, Kalis answered, because you made sure it could. He gestured to the frozen hollow. The operative's sleeve had fallen back during the takedown, revealing the injector still clutched in his hand. Thexia stepped closer. The device was small and sleek, its surface etched with faint glyphs she recognized from the training manual. As she studied it, the simulation flickered. Holographic senators glitched, faces stuttering, voices fracturing into static, entire sections of the chamber tearing like torn parchment before snapping back into place. A low, discordant hum rose from the injector, vibrating through the floor and into her bones, a sickening resonance that made the air itself feel wrong. Kalis watched her reaction. Low-level Jakari agent, radicalized through Warden proxies. One strike from that, and Tino's ability to hold the Senate together would have dissolved from within. You stopped it cold. Thexia straightened. The contrast still lingered in her mind. The operative's chaotic, desperate violence against her forced serenity. She had felt the raw power of that lunge in her own arm. She had answered it with control. Kalis studied her for a long moment. You're ready for the next level. She stood there a moment longer, chest rising and falling. The simulation had felt real. The sudden savage lunge, the explosion of panic, the burn in her muscles as she held the line against raw violence, while her voice remained perfectly serene. 16 years old, and she already understood that true protection often looked like nothing at all. A quiet intervention that let the larger conversation flow uninterrupted. She thought of her mother's words on Lysara 4, of the promise she had whispered as a child. The weight had grown heavier with every year, but so had her ability to carry it. That night, she returned to her quarters, the moon rock still in her pocket. She lay on her narrow cot, staring at the low ceiling, the faint blue conduit light casting slow patterns across the metal. Tomorrow, the drills would continue. Tomorrow, the simulations would grow more complex. But she was learning, slowly, painfully, how to stand ready without breaking the balance. and she would keep learning until the day the wait was no longer practice, but real.